Good afternoon and welcome to the Football Letter Live. Today we're thrilled to chat with Penn State letterman Calvin Lowry, a standout defensive back with Penn State from 2002 to 2005. An all Big Ten safety with the Nittany Lions, Calvin spent 3 seasons in the NFL where he played special teams and safety for Tennessee, Denver, and Jacksonville. He also spent the 2009 training camp with the Detroit Lions. Calvin was a fourth-round draft pick of the Titans in 2006. He played in 43 games and totaled 86 tackles, 13 pass deflections, and started 14 games in his NFL career. Calvin's best season statistically came in the 2007 season when he collected 57 tackles, including 42 solo tackles, and had 2 interceptions for Tennessee. Currently, he's in his 6th season coaching at the University of Tulsa, overseeing the receivers and also coaching special teams. He joined the Tulsa coaching staff in January of 2015 and has been part of 2 bowl teams with the Golden Hurricanes, including the 2015 Camping World Independence Bowl and the 2016 Miami Beach Bowl. Before coming to Tulsa, Calvin spent 3 seasons at Baylor University, including 2 years as an assistant director of operations and 1 as a graduate assistant coach. He worked with Baylor's offense and special teams in that 1 season. Calvin, we're thrilled to be talking with you today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's all a pleasure.
Maybe a good place to start is, can you walk us through the recruiting process when you were in high school? What drew you to Penn State and how did you become a Nittany Lion?
Growing up, being in a military family, we kind of moved around a bunch. Never lived in the state of Pennsylvania, but my father was an avid Penn State fan. So I grew up watching Penn State football. So I knew about the LeVar Arringtons, the Courtney Browns, Coach Joe Paterno, and their dominant defenses, and told myself if I ever had that opportunity, that's where I wanted to go to school. And they offered me in the spring of my junior year. Before they could finish the sentence, I committed. I had no idea exactly where Penn State was, didn't know what it looked like. I just knew LeVar Arrington, Coach Joe Paterno, and, all the other legendary players that have come before us.
Jumping ahead a little bit, heading into the 2005 season, your senior season, what were your personal expectations that you had for the team, and what gave you the most confidence about the team going into that season?
My personal goals were to play in the Rose Bowl. You go to a Big Ten school to play in the Rose Bowl, and the unfortunate that year was the national championship was in the Rose Bowl. So we were fighting like hell to try to be one of those final 2 to play there. But we knew we were a good football team. We had some setbacks, my sophomore, junior year. But we were a dominating defense. My junior year, we didn't allow anybody to score more than 21 points on us. So when we had everybody coming back, and we knew with that nucleus of guys defensively, if we can go out and, hell, we could score on defense or special teams, being that I was involved in special teams myself, that we had a chance to win. And then we started playing some younger guys on offense, the Justin Kings, the Derek Williams, the Deion Butlers, and then you had Mike Robb back at quarterback. And it just kind of snowballed. And that was a hell of a year, a fun ride that year.
You mentioned a bunch of guys, all leaders. Who on that team provided the leadership, and what was your leadership approach being a senior on that squad?
I think we had a bunch of course, you had your Chiefs, you had your guys, Mike Robbs, your Alan Zamaitis, your Paul Puzzlesnys, your Tom Bahalis, but there was never a power struggle amongst the units right there. Everybody knew, there was a chief, and of course, everybody had to fall in line. There were Indians, and we just knew that everybody wanted to accomplish the same goal. We knew the work that we would put in summertime, the extra, the film study, the 7-on-7s that we did in the summer, orchestrated ourselves, that it was going to pay off, and it ultimately did.
This might be a little bit of a difficult question, but how do you describe that 2005 team in a sentence or 2, if that's even possible?
Outside of, the 94 Rose Bowl team, I think it's probably one of the most dominating teams that they've had at Penn State, and that's not being cocky. That's just being confident in the skill set that we had at all the positions. We had a quarterback that could run and throw the ball. We had receivers that can create separation. We had a running back that was one of the hardest guys to tackle. Our offensive line was dominating. Our defense, nobody could throw the ball. Nobody could run the ball on us, and we were just very, very confident as a team that if they put the ball down, no matter what, it was in a parking lot or on some grass, we were going to accomplish the goal.
So the Whiteout Game that season, 2005, your senior season, generally regarded as one of the top games at Beaver Stadium. What do you remember most about that game, and especially the atmosphere that night in Happy Valley?
how loud it was really being on defense. The conversations that we usually had defensively amongst each other on the field, we weren't allowed to do that. It was so loud. That it definitely played a factor in that game. They were 6, we were 16th coming to that game. College game day was there. It was just one of those that springboarded the rest of our season to accomplish the goal that we wanted to accomplish. And that was one, first be, Big Ten championships and then, or Big Ten champions. And then second, try to get to the national championship when, we fell one step short, but we definitely finished it up at a BCS bowl game there at the Orange Bowl.
Can you take me through the interception you had that game and kind of like what was your approach going up against Ohio State's playmakers?
They had tremendous talent all over the place. I mean, you had Ted Ginn. I mean, you had Troy Smith at the quarterback, who ultimately the next year ends up winning the Heisman. They had Pittman at running back. They had a phenomenal offensive line. So it was just one of those prototypical Big Ten night, primetime games. It just set up that way. And it was that interception. They had run that play earlier in the game. I had seen it. And I had been one step short of making the play previous. And talked myself into it. If that happens again, I'm going to make that play. And ultimately, it happened. I saw it, it kind of slow mode. If people could believe me on that, it just kind of all happened. And then, being 5 yards short of returning it for a touchdown was the biggest, hiccup that I had. Was I would have loved to have seen how loud the stadium really could have got had I run that in there. But, 2 or 3 plays later, Mike Robb runs it in for a touchdown. I think Derrick Williams runs it in for a touchdown on a reverse type play. And then there we just, took off defensively.
I mean, you have vivid memories from that game. So I'm just curious, like how often do you think about that game or even keep in touch with some of the guys that you played with?
I'm probably one of the worst alumni at Penn State, because of my job. I'm uber busy all the time. I'm always recruiting or talking to somebody, kids, parents, working on our game plan. So I do a very poor job of reaching out and staying in touch with some of my guys. But the atmosphere, the joy that we had just to go out and play ball. And we never made it bigger than what it was. It wasn't, 6 versus 16. It was Penn State versus Ohio State. You go back through the lineage of Penn State joining the Big Ten and just some of the epic games that they've had. And I think that's definitely up there in the top ranks of all of them.
And kind of just to follow up on that, how, the team's camaraderie, the chemistry, the bond that you guys had, just how important is that for a team to go from good to great, and especially on that 2005 team?
A lot of people tend to forget about it, but it started back in the 2004 season when we're at Indiana and we had a 4-down stop right there in the red zone for them to win the game and for us to win the game. And I remember it like it was yesterday. First down, we make a play. Second down, I make a play. Third down, Paul makes a play. And then on fourth down, I try to run a play. And it was just like a gang tackle that we were able to make that play. And then we had not lost since that game. The next week we go play Michigan State. I remember that. I had two interceptions. Then we take that momentum and springboard to the 2005 season. And then until we get to the Michigan game, and to this day, I feel like we got cheated. I mean, they catch the ball out of bounds twice. They get 2 seconds back on the clock, which we end up losing with 2 seconds on the clock. It was a miscommunication between myself and some of the secondary guys, didn't get checks. And I take full ownership on that. And we end up losing by 2 points there at Michigan. Had that not happened, we would have seen it if we could have springboard one of, Texas or USC to the national championship. But at that point, I think that was a divine intervention for those two teams to play at that particular time.
Yeah, no, I mean, you bring up a great point, especially the way that 04 season ended. Did that make maybe a good question is going into the offseason following 04, going into 05, how much was that? I don't want to say a motivating factor, but how much were you motivated to kind of turn that around, especially given what did happen at Indiana? Because we've heard like Tamba Hali tell the stories and like what it was like in the locker room, kind of just how important was that moment at Indiana for a springboard into 05?
Man, it was the seed that blossomed into the 2005 season. Winning is hard at no matter what level you're at, whether it be high school, college, NFL. Winning is hard. So once you get those opportunities to win, you cherish those, and it's a high that you can't buy. So once you have that feeling within yourself at fingertips, you never want to relinquish it, and you want to keep fighting for it. So we use that that fuel, that drive, that passion to fuel us through the off season. I thought that was one of the best off seasons that we had going into the winter. And then you hit spring ball, and then you hit training camp, and it was just a mission type mindset that we had, that this is not the way that us seniors wanted to go out. We wanted to go out with a BCS bowl game or a national championship, Big 12, Big 10 championship involved.
And kind of just switching gears a little bit. I mean, you played for Coach Paterno. It seems like everyone has a favorite story about him or a memorable story. Anything that jumps out to you, or even just what it was like to play for him?
Man, it was, as I get older and now that I'm in the profession, man, it was one of the most rewarding times of my life. I got to play at that particular time for a living legend. And didn't know. You take things like that for granted because of your youth and being naive. But now that I'm in the other side of it as a coach, you realize the dedication and the passion that those coaches put into you, and the passion that they believe in you and see for you. He took me out of a situation, being from Fayetteville, North Carolina, where a lot of people don't get out of, and gave me the opportunity to get education and play ball.
You've been coaching for a couple of years now, shifting gears. At what point during your career did you have a passion for coaching, and how did your career kind of go in that direction?
I always knew I wanted to help the youth of America some way, somehow. And when I got done playing professionally, I knew there was still a yearn for something to do. So I ended up moving to Texas, ended up, coaching at a private high school here in Austin, Texas, for 1 year. But even going through that, I knew there was still a yearning, a bigger mission for me. And at the time, Coach Norwood, who was my position coach at Penn State, was the associate head coach and safeties coach at Baylor, invited me up, and I started working camps, and I kind of fell in love with it. And I knew this is where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. Got on as a GA, started my grad school program there at Baylor, did the first year there. We ended up going to the Holiday Bowl, finishing the year 8-6, something like that. And then that next year, I got promoted to special teams quality control, and I started working with special teams and still working with the offense. And then we ended up winning 2 Big 12 championships back to back. And then after the second one, Coach Montgomery, who was the offensive coordinator at Baylor, took me and brought me up here at Tulsa, and I've been here ever since. So there's definitely not enough hours in the day to accomplish the things that I want to do, but I get to affect more people in one day and 1 year than the average person gets to do their entire life.
Well, you talked about everything you want to accomplish. What are your future football goals, and what are you hoping to accomplish over the next, say, 3 to 5 years, and maybe even beyond?
My immediate goal this year is to get us back to a bowl game. These guys have worked tremendously hard. There's been a lot of sacrifice and dedication. Our mantra, especially for the receiver room, special teams, and pretty much the entire team, is just adopt and adapt. We're trying to get these young men to a bowl game, because there's quite a few seniors on this team that have, blood, sweat, and tears, have put a lot into this program, that have come up short from going to bowl games. And I don't know what that's going to look like come December, January, with everything that's going on. But we can definitely put our stamp on it by getting bowl eligible as quickly, as fast as possible, so these guys can rest assured that they'll be going somewhere, for the bowl season, now that they want to call it bowl season. But it's always been bowl season. They just put an official name on it. But I strive to be an offensive coordinator. I strive to be a head coach, and I work diligently every day to try to accomplish that goal.
Well, Calvin, we appreciate your time today. We appreciate everything you do for Penn State. We're cheering you on, and we're rooting for you. So thank you again for the time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.